Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Recruiting EQ podcast. I'm Rick Coluccio. This is a podcast which advocates for the use of emotional intelligence and EQ in the workforce, especially now that it's a world of AI tools. I think it's more useful than ever to have these talks. Today's episode is episode number 98, getting dangerously close to that 100 mark, which is shocking and cool. And today's episode we called Keeping Focus on Humans in an Efficiency-Driven Economy. It's our special guest, John Pazoulis. John, how's it going?
Good. Thanks for having me.
Pleasure to have you on as well. You and I had a pretty good conversation the first time we spoke. We've spoken a couple of times, and I feel like we didn't even hit on the fact that we both used to work in music studio production somehow.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. A lot of stuff is not on your resume, right? And so proof pudding for why you want to use a recruiter that, you got to dig deep to find the commonalities and things that we don't normally talk about. So yes, the music production was something that was a passion of mine for sure. And I mean, I still play piano today and
nice
and stuff, but yeah.
Ballads, merengues?
More like, think of like spoken word type poetry and stuff like that. And
oh, wow. Okay.
It's like the male version of a journal.
yeah. So geez, yeah, you're more art house than I expected. I was expecting some pop rock to come out of you there, but no, okay, arty stuff. Cool. Well, I don't think that the usual listeners of this podcast need me to go on and on again about how I used to be in the music business, since I talk about it almost every week. But I would love as a start, aside from playing piano and doing spoken word stuff, if you could maybe give our listeners a bit of a sense of, who you are, what you're about, what you're currently doing, that'd be great.
Yeah. So, I mean, I've been a veteran of recruiting for 20 years now. I kind of fell into the industry just like everybody else probably. I worked in hospitality, worked in retail, service, and so on, and then got pulled into this space. Actually, the story was I worked for a marketing company where we did experiential demos. Most people know about like the Costco demos, you get samples and things like that. I did that for 3-4 years. And part of that job was constantly recruiting because we had so much turnover. It was just, transient employees and so on. So I had a team of 300 people and I had to recruit probably 10, 20 people every single week to keep that number at that mark.
Yeah.
And because of that, I started developing recruiting skills, like, how do you go to all the social centers and get people and reach out to build a network of recruitment to constantly feed me candidates for this kind of opportunity, right? So I got the skill set there, and then I got actually headhunted to go to a staffing company. So I worked with if you heard of True Blue or People Ready, I worked with them for close to a decade. Moved up within the organization, really learned a lot of the enterprise type, recruiting aspects of that. And then I got into executive search with a couple of startups. And I guess after all that time, the next evolution was then to create our own firm. I mean, I think a big part of that was, I guess I've always wanted to have my own company or build something, but also just so many layoffs. If you've been in recruitment, you've had a layoff, I'm sure. And so I had 4 layoffs in like 12 plus years. I said, it's time to do something, Now my kids say, well, daddy can't get fired now. So, can't get laid off. And so that's really what created our company, Ready Set Exec. And so this is our 3rd year now. We bootstrapped the company, complete bootstrap with basically a credit card and some dreams. And, I think year 3, we're starting to get a good, our feet under us and really start to grow and so on.
Yeah, that's amazing. And we didn't cover this too at the onset, but a lot of the people I have on this show are Americans, Brits, Aussies, but fellow Canadian, which is fun. Fellow Ontarian, no less. Although I guess I'm a Quebecer still at heart, but you're right on the border over there at Ottawa, right? It's like you're in Ottawa. Were you born in Ottawa? Where were you from in Canada initially?
Well, I'm like a dual citizen with Greece, but my family came to Canada, and I was born here. My mom wanted to have me here because the Civic Hospital was the first hospital in the 80s. I'm aging myself now, but it was the first hospital that had ultrasound. And so my mom had like 3 or 4 miscarriages before in Greece. And she's like, okay, there's an ultrasound in Canada, we're coming. So she had me here because of the ultrasound, and probably was one of those, terrible images where it looks terrible, but she got to see me and very happy to have me. So anyways, that's how the story goes, why I was born here. And yeah, I'm still here in Ottawa all these years later. So born and raised, and,
yeah, that's awesome. And I'm sure you've seen, I've seen it from, because of being in Montreal where I was in Ottawa a lot, and being in the music business, it took me to Ottawa often to play shows because it's so close. But I have a lot of friends who live there now, ex-Montrealers mostly, who've left Toronto to go to Ottawa. It has changed drastically since COVID, and even just before.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, the city is unrecognizable.
It's unrecognizable. It is so much more built up and vibrant, even in a part, like obviously the Byward Market area has always been vibrant, but all over the city, the university campuses are all brand. It's crazy.
Well, I mean, they still can't get the transit system going, so don't even get me started on that, right?
Right. But if you're driving or Ubering,
we have some of the worst traffic in Canada, I think. It's ridiculous. We have one highway. It's anyone who lives here is like, this is brutal. But thankfully, I work remotely, so I don't have to deal with that.
Yeah, working remotely is key. That's it. I think the growth has happened so fast, the infrastructure hasn't caught up at all.
Yeah, absolutely.
Is what it seems like. Yeah. Well, great. Happy to have you on the show, live and direct from Ottawa. At Ready Set Exec, what do you guys work on primarily, if you don't mind telling the audience?
Yeah, so even though we are based in Canada, our market is the US. 90% plus of our recruiting's there. In Canada, we'll do the odd search in Ottawa, Toronto, Montreal, Vancouver, Calgary, because people ask us. But the US is our market. So for us, what we focus on is more of the roles rather than the vertical, which is a little bit different. But we focus on sales, marketing, HR, and operations, right? So those executives and then the teams under them. And the reason we do this is, if you look at me and my co-founder, our past experiences, the type of jobs we've had and so on, we've done each of those roles, right? Mm-hmm. So I had an HR, an operations heavy role, right? We also worked in firms before that were specialized only in sales or only in marketing or only in HR. Those are some of the startups we worked with. So because of that, we've had so much exposure in those four roles. We consider ourselves experts at this point, and we have high comfort level in being able to, produce results really well on those four types of roles, right? So that's where our positioning is.
Yeah, I think
it's been going good.
I think that's a great idea, right? Is to play to your strengths. I know a lot of people try to also build a business pivoting to what they think is a hot market, but that can, obviously you're going to face a lot of competition, and if you're not an expert, it's hard to differentiate yourself.
Well, and that's where the thing is, the economy's been crazy, right? And so like if you're in supply chain, like in the fall, I had like over 50 execs reach out to me for jobs because, my whole operation shut down last week because our customers are not making orders due to tariffs, right? So with us, we've been able to pivot through different verticals, but staying on the same roles as we go from vertical to vertical. That's really been great. And also at this point, after 20 years of recruitment, I don't think there's a vertical I haven't touched, to be honest.
Yeah.
Like I've worked in every single vertical at some point, and it's like all that institutional knowledge of working with them. Also, what was nice was, because I was in staffing for 10 years, I've recruited and let's say placed the executives, but I've also done staffing for their employees, like all their. So I've been in all those, the foundry plant, the manufacturing plant, the office space. In staffing, the beautiful thing about staffing is you get exposed to literally everybody, because everybody needs temp staff. And so I think that's been a plus for me to say, yeah, I understand how your business is, because I've staffed your business a few years ago, and I understand how it operates and your challenges that you have, because we've dealt with the middle managers, right? And now you're working with the executives, building the executive team. We're like, yeah, I know who your team will be. I know what your business looks like. So it gives you perspective, I think, right? Which is important.
That's an interesting point, right, that you raise in terms of having the know-how to get into conversations with C-level people can sometimes come from the prior experience you've had in servicing their teams and organizations, where you can see what those challenges were and whatever, and build toward being like, I've been kind of running alongside you guys this whole time in a way.
Well, it's a lot of credibility on my end when I talk to a sales leader and I say, or a CEO, and I say, I'll hire your sales leader for your organization. But guess what? I did manage a team of 15 salespeople with a P&L and a budget and forecasting, and and I'm also a certified sales trainer, so I can train. I understand what to look for to build a good pipeline. So it's like it's just credibility building that you're doing. Like you've seen it, you've done it, you've staffed it.
Yeah.
You're approaching it from every angle, right? I think that's a big part of the value that we offer, right? But I think for anyone, if you've been in an industry for many years, you pick up on a lot of things, right? So everyone's got their background and experience that they can bring to their job and leverage that as their superpower, let's say, for what they're doing.
For sure. Now, I don't want to get too political on this podcast, so we don't need to go down this rabbit hole too much, but you mentioned the tariff situation specifically in supply chain manufacturing. Obviously that's something that has been a hot topic in the news all year, for sure. Since you're here in Canada, but you do a lot of business in the States too, what kind of impact have you seen off and on either side of the border? Is it mostly Canada that you've seen become affected, or how do you feel about the whole thing?
I mean, right now, I think just looking at the whole economy, it seems there's a lot of hesitation and like people just wait and see approach is from a lot of people. So a lot of companies are going more towards fractional hiring or temp hiring because they want to be able to quickly, if something changes, like if the war in Iran escalates and there's an issue, they can quickly get rid of staff and cut down their overhead, their burn rate for their business. Right. And same thing with exec hiring. A lot of companies have pushed their exec hiring decisions for the future, and they're sort of doing a wait and see. No one's investing money. No one's really, unless you're an AI, which is gobbling up all the VC and private equity funds and all these new startups and AI and so on. Everybody else is kind of just like, I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. Supply chain issue, tariff issue, war. It's just a very unstable. Like people in business want security and stability, and when they have that, then they'll start to grow and hire their business. And I think lately it's been, you don't even know what's going to happen the next day in the news. So people are just like, if I can wait, I will. And so you hear that, wait till September, wait till Q4. Eventually the dam's going to break and we're going to have to go back to some normalcy with hiring, but there's been a bit of that, right? And of course, this is anecdotal because some industries are in growth and others are just flat. So I don't want to speak for the whole economy. It's huge. There's so many things going on.
There are, for sure. But just in terms of what you've seen, I mean, like, again, anecdotally, I've sort of seen in Canada, even though I focus on the States myself and I live in Toronto, but the Canada team that we deal with and just people I speak to in the Canadian market, it does seem like the market that is not really slowing down on spending and doesn't seem as bothered by like a doomsday outlook or like the wait and see kind of mentality is Calgary. Calgary seems to be hiring and moving forward with projects. And I'm not saying that it's like striking gold per se, but Calgary seems, and you got to wonder if it's just the perception or attitude that they're not as worried about the way things are going, perhaps politically. I don't really know exactly the cause of it, but it does seem like everywhere else in Canada, especially, there's a little trepidation, there's a slowness, like, okay, whoa, let's plan this out, let's take it slow. But Calgary seems to just be like, yeah, no, we're just hiring, whatever. Things are fine.
I think it's also just like cultural thing, right? Like in Canada in general, there's very much how would I put it? More conservative outlook on things.
For sure.
They're just more conservative, less risk averse. It's not as entrepreneurial as like the US, where people are just like, yeah, I'll go bankrupt, it's fine, let's build this company. So there's a bit more of that, and that's a cultural thing, right?
Yeah. So, financially conservative in Canada and politically more liberal here. And then in the States, it's the opposite.
Well, I mean, depends on what state, right? I mean, in California and New York, I mean, you see like there's a lot, politically, like there's definitely a lot less conservatism, but
for sure,
it's a big place. It's hard to, you don't want to like put everyone in one box, right?
Absolutely. I think that's a good message in general too. Like even for Canadians who I run into in general, who are like, oh my God, what's happening in the US? And I'm like, well, you can't just base it on news headlines. There's 400 million people in the US. There's a lot more happening there than you just see on the news, right? Good and bad. Okay, well then let's dive into it. So you and I had a chat about a bunch of different things about, pardon me, recruiting, operations, sales, where it's going, how to do different things. You've been focused a lot on the personal branding, marketing, content kind of piece. Pardon me, lately. Can you give us a breakdown of a little bit of that journey?
Well, I think for us, being bootstrapped, we had to, how do you stretch your marketing dollars, right? How do you get the most bang for your buck, and how do you make the most impact with a small marketing budget, really, And so we started off with, doing our monthly events for job seekers. So every single month we do an event for executive job seekers in the US and Canada that are looking for roles, offering basically value add free support, right? We have a panel of experts coming, from salary negotiators to executive coaches and so on, resume writers. They come on, they offer free advice. We can then repurpose that for content, obviously, right? But it's mainly just to offer value add to our network, and also to show people we care. And our view is a candidate today is a customer tomorrow, right? We help that CHRO find a job, or help them with a resume, or offer some value for them. When we come back and ask them for a role a few months down the road, when they do get their role, they're inclined to at least give us the time of day. Oh yeah, I remember you. I came to your event, right? So we started with the events, and then we had the idea with our marketer to start a podcast. So we started our own podcast every Friday at noon. It's the Ready Set Exec, the podcast. We just thought it was easy to do that. And I mean, that just adds to your overhead in terms of all the things you got to be doing to create the guests, and just, right, having your own podcast here, it's a lot of work. But so we did that. And then of course I've always been one to post on LinkedIn. And it's just trying to keep consistent between posting, creating reels and videos, having our podcast out, doing our monthly events. There's a lot that we're doing to get out there and sort of like hit above our, we're doing enough marketing, let's say, that we definitely can keep up with some of the bigger companies that have those $1 million budgets, so, I think it's helped a lot. And yeah, personal brand's important now, especially in being visible and, being viewed as a thought leader, or, I hate these terms.
Yeah.
Yeah. As I said, like, I'm a full-time entertainer now. It's ridiculous. But
yeah, the content creation game. But I mean, pardon me, to your point, and this is something that I ask of a lot of the people who come onto this podcast, and even just my clients and candidates in general, which is that it kind of seems that in a post social media world and job market and whatever, definitely in recruitment, definitely in sales, but maybe almost in every role going forward, there's an element where personal branding is becoming vital for your image. It's not just like, I'm going to send a resume that's just words about where I worked and what I did, that's going to even get you a job at all anymore, to make you stand out, you know what I mean?
Yeah, and for everyone, regardless of the job you have, like, building your own personal brand is something you take with you from company to company, right? So it just helps you be seen, helps you get authority in the space, and also just helps you get more opportunities, right? Regardless of what you're doing, especially for like sales roles, right? We've seen some. I mean, there was that one salesperson, I don't know her last name, but Sarah, everyone knows Sarah, Selling Sarah or whatever.
Yeah.
She started as a salesperson. Now she has her own sales training organization, I think, or something. That's all from her personal brand of showing cold calls and drinking coffees. I remember seeing these clips, and, now not everyone is as charismatic or can do that. But I mean, even if you're not like suited for it, I know for me, like, I'm definitely an introvert, but I've developed some sales skills and presentation skills over the year to do it. But you got to make an effort to do something, even just posting regularly, to show some thought leadership, right, in the space, the industry you're in. So I recommend. Yeah.
Absolutely. And so for you, so let's break out some of that as well. You've got, pardon me, the podcast, but you are pre-recording them, and you've got a ton of these in the can that are just going to go out weekly. That was your approach that you took. Am I right?
Well, so many people wanted to be on it, and like a lot of great people. I'm not going to say no to a great guest, right? So I'm like, yeah, sure, I'll record. And so right now we have 32 episodes out. I have another 50 like done that are already scheduled to be released for the Fridays. So that's great. All the way till the end of the year, you know?
Yeah, great.
Now, I mean, the good news is too, the stuff we're talking about is not like related to like recent events in the news and things. You're talking about theory and best practices and so on, right? We interview executives that are in our network. Some of them are giving advice for CEOs, and then some of them are also giving advice in terms of best practices for, you know, the role, if they're an HR practitioner or whatnot.
I mean, yeah. Sorry, I don't know. We lost my video there for a second.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that the podcast approach is interesting, right? Because it's content marketing, but it's conversational. And it's also, in my opinion, it's kind of like a network creation exercise. Like you create more of a real network. Everybody says they want to sell my networking, but half the time it's just like putting yourself in front of someone to just sell them something. But I think I personally have seen a value in doing conversations like this, even if it isn't directly sales related. How has it been for you guys as an exercise? Like, what are the types of things you're trying to measure in using a podcast as a business tool? Or like the residual benefits, or how's it?
Yeah, I mean, there's two things, right? Like it's like there's a sales aspect to it where we want to have CEOs on that potentially could be a potential customer down the road, sure. But there's also the marketing aspect of it. Like we just want to have people come on in the industries we recruit in the roles we recruit in, so sales, marketing, HR, ops, and so on, and have a good conversations. And what's funny is like I've always had these conversations. Like the podcast, what you see is the conversations I usually have with people all the time. We just never recorded it. And then they're like, well, why don't you just start recording them? I'm like, okay, fine. You know, because I literally meet with probably 50 execs every single week. It's ridiculous how back-to-back FaceTime. I'm very much video only with any people I talk to.
Yeah, same.
So I'm like on video, on camera, like all week, all day, every day, back to back, consistent with a lot of people. So it's like great conversations, right? And what's funny is like usually the best conversations are like after the podcast is recorded, when we get really into like politics or whatever else that you don't want to have out there because it's, you know, controversial or what.
No, John,
that's how you build your network, right? You have real.
Are you back?
Yeah,
we lost you for a second.
We had a little pause there on the stream.
Yeah, apologies if it's my internet. They're building a building right next to mine in Toronto because #Toronto. So hopefully they're not messing with the fibe. But yeah, that's the thing, is it gives people a bit of an insider look, right, to the kinds of conversations that you have with execs on a regular basis, which I find is a fascinating extension of what LinkedIn is, which is a bit of an insider look. But I actually think there's more value to hear what people's concerns are, thoughts are, accolades are, like, you know, from their own mouths, of like, you know, getting a sense of what everybody's about. And I feel like that can also be a big tool as a potential employee. If you see the CEO of a certain company and you feel like you're really aligned with them or whatever else, it can also help, I think, in terms of job search to consume this kind of content versus just seeing a really cleaned up, polished marketing document that is very generic, right? Which is what we had in the past, mostly, is people's websites, and all the copy was super polished and not very human.
Well, that's one of the things I've heard lately some companies doing for outreach on roles, where they'll have the hiring team record a short video explaining the role and getting really personal with the team, to just show like the kind of work environment and culture you'd be going to, besides just what this role is. So definitely it's something top of mind. Of course, it all talks to, you know, how much time and effort and money you want to spend on doing that, right? And what's working also with outreach.
I think I lost you briefly again, but you're back. Are you back? The internet is not being kind today. It's the heat.
I cut out.
You're back now, though,
Yep.
which is great.
Yeah. Okay.
But yes, totally agree with everything about the human approach. I feel like some people are doing it better than others, though. Like, right? Some companies seem to be trying to do the human approach thing, but it's really cringe because it's very fake seeming, and other people seem to be being a little more genuine and human. I feel like we're still figuring it out as a workforce.
Well, I mean, I guess it depends on the individual, right? Like, I mean, you can tell if someone's authentic and actually cares versus someone is just trying to get a paycheck. And that's the unfortunate thing in the recruiting industry. There's no regulation. So you have like companies like ours, which I'd like to believe that we care deeply about the people that we're dealing with, both our candidates and our clients, and like trying to treat everyone with respect. And then I've seen it. I mean, I've been in the industry a long time, to see those people are just like, they're just trying to get a commission. They're chasing, a lot of shady practices too. Like the reason there's regulation now in Ontario, for example, about recruiters where you have to pay $750 to register is because there's a few bad apples in Toronto, and I know them because I've seen that their spots before. Yeah, we're doing like underground, paying cash, human trafficking. Who knows what else was going on in some of these warehouses. And because of them, now they crack down on all of us, which, is not great.
It's not great, but I understand the need for regulation when you're getting stuff like that too. And even on the contract front, there were some various controversies with people sort of not doing due diligence and working with people who are foreign nationals, somewhat like illegally, who didn't have proper documentation, or who weren't being investigated. So like it wasn't. I believe there was like in the Canadian government in particular, right? There's a sort of an accusation that there were some people who ended up working at the jobs but weren't the people who interviewed. And the agencies.
There's a lot of that in like engineering and IT.
In IT,
you hire someone and it's someone overseas doing the work, but they have someone local pretend to be the person to get a paycheck, and a lot of scams going on. It's tough. You got to vet that your candidates are real and the real person. It's crazy.
Yeah, and it's a security concern because these people are given security clearance when they become an employee, even temporarily, right, in government functions. So I do get the regulation, especially during COVID with a lot of remote roles, helps people just sort of do a better job of managing quality and like their due diligence. But I agree, it's because of sketchy people, right, that they've ruined it for everybody.
Well, it would be good if we had something along the lines of real estate transactions where you have there's a governing body, there's some level of regulation in terms of like best practices and so on. There really isn't that much. There's a couple of groups that are coming out with something.
There are. Yeah, there are a couple for sure. But yeah, I mean, I think that the content driven approach to me is kind of indicative of like bringing who you are to the table a little bit in what you do, and not just hiding who you are as an individual and then just having a generic script of, oh, this is what I sell. Just think about the company. Don't look at me right now. Just look at the company. This is the product, or this is the service, or this is the candidate. I'm invisible here. I'm not part of the equation. I feel like that era is going away in a way. How do you feel about that? Do you feel like that's something you're seeing more, that the person needs to be in the equation?
I think companies are just trying to save money, and so in trying to save money, it's like there's some bean counter somewhere that's like, well, we can make it 10 times more efficient by doing this process, or
Sure.
So I think it comes down to like, let's say the efficiency people, the finance people, looking at things as a cost reduction, and then there's a lack of like, okay, but what about candidate experience? What about drop off rates for candidates? What about culture building? In terms of like when you meet with a recruiter, right? That's probably like your first interaction besides the job description. Right. And if you don't have like a good experience with that, like they don't do. good company to work for. I'm definitely of the mindset that we have to be people-centric or human-centric with what we're doing. And I think it's really important that we're making sure that everything that's involved in a human process has to be like, you got to put yourself in the candidate's shoes, right? Like, what are they seeing? What are they experiencing? Is there transparency of the process that you're going through? Like, you know exactly how many recruiting steps you have to go through, how many hoops you got to jump through. Are what they asking of you fair and reasonable? Like, they're not asking you for like a case study that's a weekend long, right? They're not asking you to do testing that is not appropriate, like psychological testing and all these other things that are very intrusive. Like, there's a certain limit to, am I going to work at the CIA or like what's going on here, right? And there's also the aspect of like, hey, I'm not here as an interviewee to give you free consulting, right?
Sure.
Like, because there's a lot of that going on. So yeah, I mean, we see bad process all the time. A lot of times when we go in, one of the first things we do too is like as a process audit of our client, because we're like, listen, we can bring you the A player in like 2 weeks and you're happy, but then you're going to screw it up and drop the ball. We're not going to have that. Like, we're going to make sure you're going to make the hire, but let's look through your process. What are you doing? How are you doing it? Let's get the best practices that we know in line here, because that's a big thing.
Yeah, because I agree with you that I think that there's a big disconnect between candidates, recruiters, and hiring managers or employers, right?
Yeah.
There's a disconnect between all three. And I think that lack of communication or disconnect about what they think the process should be or the experience should be shows itself in a bunch of different ways. And like, each individual is trying to do what they think is best for themselves and be the most efficient and best possible, but they conflict with each other, right? Like, because, to your point, because in marketing in particular, like high level marketing people, they get asked to do these big presentations and there's a cynicism about doing them because they feel like they're going to be asked to do free work for like 3-4 different potential employers they're interviewing at and then not even get a job, right? But then now you get candidates who are in a sales desk and who have maybe 3-4 years experience, and the employer says, okay, make me a 30, 60, 90-day plan. They're like, no, I saw online that you can't ask me to do anything because you're just scamming. You're going to take all my ideas and you're going to steal them. I'm like, there's no ideas that go into a 30, 60, 90-day sales plan that someone hasn't heard before. Unless you're you know what I mean? Like, so there's a lot of disconnect of information, right? That causes a lot of friction and cynicism, I find, between applicants, candidates that are headhunted by recruiters, and the employers. How are you feeling about that sort of miscommunication? Like, are you finding you have to educate candidates as well, not just employers, about this kind of stuff?
Yeah, I mean, this is the thing, and a lot of times we forget is like, sure, the company wants to use AI, let's say, in recruitment, to save money or, to make their process more efficient, but like candidates can also use it, and they will.
Yeah. Yes.
So if you're asking for like a 90-day plan as a sales rep, I'll go into Claude and I'll say, hey, look at this company, XYZ. Think about the product they're selling that costs this amount. Create a 90-day plan as a new sales rep that I can present. Done. And then you're just getting AI slop presented to them. Just, if you really want to vet someone, it's got to be face-to-face, live questions where you can see that it's not a bot you're talking to. And then you have to get into it with them, behavioral, skills, everything, right? EQ. Like, there's a lot of things you're looking for here besides just like, do they know how to make a plan? Like, I think a lot of times companies, they really don't know how to vet people. They don't know at all. And so then they create these hurdles because they're like, well, I'm nervous about hiring someone, and so let's put all these barriers up so that like only the very few will get through because it's so, because I'm so scared of hiring someone. And it's like, listen, like the more barriers you're putting up, you're creating friction in the candidate process, right? This is creating friction for every candidate that wants to come through, and you have to also be candidate centric. And so I think the big thing is like, what we always, and I learned this early in my career, we call it the Ben Duffy test. You think of 10 questions that the person you're meeting would ask you. And, and that's how you put yourself in their shoes and think of the questions they're going to ask you before they even ask you what those questions are. So same thing with candidates, same thing with clients. And anyone listening that's used to work with me will know the Ben Duffy, right? And so you're like, okay, what are they going to ask? What do they want to know? And how can we do that in a way that's candidate centric, right? At the same time, understanding that if you're trying to hire someone, there is a certain level of risk. And no matter how many, the more obstacles you put, you're actually increasing the chance that you're not going to find the right person.
Yeah.
Because everyone of quality will say, F this process, I'm out of here. Right. Like at a certain point after the 5th interview, like you're pushing it, like people are not going to stick around. So let's pull back a bit and be like, okay, what's a reasonable method to vet someone? And obviously you got to vet them on what you care about and matter to your organization. That's sure, but there's a limit here. And sometimes I think some companies they're just creating more and more obstacles. Like I've heard the biggest one I heard was a 18-step recruiting process. That's what a client told me. Yeah, they're like, we have an 18-step recruiting process here. 18 steps. I'm like, are you paying people for these 18 steps? Because like,
how could it be? Like, how many of those were interview? Like, what do you remember? Kind of what the breakdown was?
Yeah, there was aptitude test. There was 2 or 3 assessments.
Right.
There was a case study, and there was like a screening interview. There was 10 interviews.
Do you get a PhD at the end of it? Or?
I mean, at the end, I would think you'd get like a trip to Cancun or something, because like you survived the gauntlet, it's
you didn't
like
get the
Hunger Games. I told them what you're having people go through is like literally the Hunger Games of recruitment here.
Yeah, that's intense. I feel like, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, but I feel like at some point in like the 2010s, a bunch of companies really got into the podcasts and the keynote speeches and the whatever else, and they're like, Google and Salesforce and Apple and whatever have these super long processes that are very demanding, and then they only end up with the people who really want to work for that company. I'm going to do the same thing for my company. And I'm like, well, I'm sorry, but you don't have the brand equity of Salesforce. Well, Salesforce is a little bit passé, but you know what I mean? At the time of a Salesforce or a Google, where great people will be willing to do things like that. Yeah. I think that there's almost like a delusion that it's like someone's going to be so passionate about a company they've never heard of before in their lives that they'll be subjected to. I mean, 18 is a lot, but even 10, you know what I mean? It's too much.
Yeah. So just to respond to that, the company, they don't understand where they sit in the market. They think, as a founder, you think your baby is beautiful,
right?
And it's a hard thing for me to go in sometimes and say, your baby is ugly, and sorry, like you're not a Nike, you're not an Amazon, you're not a Google, and so that's part of the whole process. Like, I think being able to have those tough conversations with the company to be like, look, you're positioned here in the market. You have to be realistic about what kind of people you can attract and bring in. And so then what levers do you want to pull as a company to bring in top talent? So you say, listen, we're not Google, but guess what? We'll give you equity. Okay, that's a lever you can pull. Another lever is signing bonus, right? That's another lever you can pull.
Yep. For sure.
Big offering a huge salary. Oh, you're making $250. We'll offer you $350 plus equity, plus bonus, plus car allowance. Boom. Like, eventually, like you get what you pay for, but it's also like you pay a premium when you're not situated where you'd like to be, right? So sometimes you have to get very aggressive with comp packages. That's definitely part of it. Flexibility and vacation and benefits are also important. But it's also like, what kind of opportunity are you offering to this person? Are they able to build, right? Are you giving them an opportunity? So if you're in a big enterprise where it's kind of like stable, they're growing at 5% every year, and you tell someone, well, the opportunity here is to grow. We're a rocket ship and we're growing. they may like that because, well, the growth potential is huge. I get to build. Like most executives you work with, regardless of whether they're sales, marketing, whatever, they all want one thing. They want to build and have a seat at the table and also feel like they've contributed some way, that they've made a huge impact, right? And so if that's part of what you can offer, that's where you can maybe get better talent for your org, even though you're not, the best brand out there and so on, right? But yeah, like brand's important, right? Just as it is personal brand, it's also company brand. What kind of culture and what are the Yelp reviews and the G2 reviews and all these review sites saying about your company and Glassdoor and so on, right? Like brand reputation matters, and it has a huge impact in terms of like your ability to attract people for sure.
Absolutely. And I mean, this brings us into, we've talked about brand, we've talked about AI and how that fits into the piece. You had even sent me and brought my attention to a post that you wrote recently, which was calling out a few different categories of ways that people integrate AI into their business and so on, and kind of the impacts there. Do you want to maybe touch on that a little bit, and we can dive into that piece?
Yeah, I mean, the post was I was unexpected how viral it went. It's still going right now. Like, it's pretty crazy. The whole idea for me was this is like something we've always done. Like, so in Ready Set Exec, we've never used AI to determine sourcing or placement of people or assessing or screening candidates. Like, it's always been a manual process, right? And so I just posted about it. I said, yeah, like our stance is this: we're not changing just because there's new tools. I get approached every single freaking day by an AI automation expert trying to sell me their service. It's insane. A year ago, it was SEO services, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Now it's AI automation. Everyone's an expert. Everyone's an expert. Well, I'll tell you what, I'm also an expert. I've used it. So what we did was we had created with Ready Set Exec, we created our own bot, right? And this bot was used to do admin work for us, right? So writing proposals and basically anything that was really tedious and repeatable.
Yep.
We got into the bot. So I created a bot that does that, has our brand knowledge, everything. It's really great for a lot of things. One thing it doesn't do is have anything to do with candidates directly, any interaction with candidates. Okay. Everything like that has to be done by a human. And so, doing research on a company, great. Use AI. It can really cut down the time that you would spend manually researching, right? Create a research report for our new client or the industry we're working in or the position we're working in, So we use it a lot. And that's the thing. My post was not to say AI, don't use it or completely don't have it as part of your recruiting.
Right.
But it was more of, we are not using it for anything involves candidate process. We are not using it, and we will never use it. So you'll always interview with a real person. You'll always be sourced in terms of building our hunt lists by a manual process where we look with our own talent eye at your profiles. We know, oh, look, Jimmy's profile's half filled or he hasn't updated in 2 years. I'm not going to discount you. An AI would, right? And so when I start to dig deeper into this, I was like, wow, this is crazy how much bias, hallucinations, and other crap that AI is doing. It's actually, there's also a bias in terms, people say, well, recruiters have bias. I'm like, yes, but when you look at some of the recent lawsuits that are happening right now, right, they saw that AI screening tools were favoring people with white male names.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Over female names. And white male names over, let's say, minority sounding names. Like, I would say probably John is probably a white sounding name versus like Ezekiel or something. I don't know. But the point is, that's how the bot, which was supposed to be unbiased and neutral, is totally biased and bringing this kind of thing up. So there's multiple lawsuits happening. And what I did was I created a full blog on this. I posted on my site to expand on what I posted, because it's like, there's a lot of things that are happening. And I'll give you some stats, okay?
Please.
A third of people that are being interviewed by AI are dropping out of the interview. Okay.
Because of disinterest, or like
they're just pissed off. They're just pissed off, like, F this bot. I'm not interviewing with a bot.
Right.
That's a third.
Yeah.
That's a true stat, right? So there's companies like HireVue and others that were doing these AI screening. I'm like, would you want as a manager 30% of interviewees to just drop out of the interview because it's a bot? To me, that's terrible. Like, what if that third, there's like your star candidate there?
Yeah.
Right?
What
so
if it's the best third?
Simple example, right? They did a Pew poll recently. They said, and this is a stat here, they did 11,000 US adults. 66% said they would not apply for a job with an employer that used AI to help make hiring decisions. So the majority of people are saying, like, we don't want this part of our process, and we're dropping out of interviews and so on, right? So that's one case. But like, besides just, you know, an AI screening tool, there's also like sourcing. People say, well, why don't you use AI for your sourcing? And I'm like, look, LinkedIn, and I have stats for this too, only 80% of users on LinkedIn are not active every 90 days. Okay. This is a true stat. If only 20% of people are active on LinkedIn every 3 months, safe to say the majority of LinkedIn users do not have up-to-date profiles.
Okay? Yeah, fair. Yeah.
And if you just do a quick test, bring up 10 people, and you probably say, okay, there's 1 or 2 that are fully up to date, right? And then there's probably 8 that are out of date, and there's probably 2 or 3 that just have like their name and their one job, right? So it's like, if AI is pulling as a sourcing tool from all this bad data out in the internet, garbage in, garbage out.
That's a very good point, right? It's like people, I think, who are hawking using AI tools for sourcing are not necessarily taking into consideration that some of the information that you need to decide whether or not most of the information, right, isn't necessarily readily available online. So they're like, just write a really good prompt. And it's like, okay, yes, but the prompt shouldn't be asking the AI to take into account factors that it's not going to find online, because then that's where you invite hallucination and everything else, right? Because it's going to just fill in the blanks, which I think a lot of people, I mean, I get this now because we've done so many walkthroughs for AI tools and whatever. As part of our job, we want to be able to advise people on, you know what I mean, being able to use different tools and ATSs and whatever. And so far, and I'm going to be probably hawking these guys a lot because we just switched to them, but so far we switched to Atlas as an ATS, which has some of the best AI summary and task creation and whatever kind of functions of any other ATS that we've tried. So that's interesting. It's obviously very new technology, so there's still flaws and bugs, whatever, but exciting, because that, as a recruiter, to help summarize things that have happened in like where someone's search is at and whatever. It's like writing you a summary. You don't have to ask it. It just does things live, or it puts things as tasks in my to-do list that have come in from my email. I don't even need to check my email. It's like, hey, Rick, send this to this person based on this email. That's great.
Listen, right? There's a lot of benefits to, again, the admin function, the summarization of 100%. Meetings and all that stuff. I completely use those things, and I agree. I'm just saying, for certain things that you want to do, it's not good.
No, like, for
really
sourcing,
bad. Really bad.
For sourcing is one of them. You can't ask it to look for stuff that's not there.
Yeah, well, and so there's one aspect of like, okay, garbage data, garbage outputs. That's one. Another thing is, when I look at a resume with my experience and my, you know, everything that I've done, I can see sort of people's potential too, and be like, okay, like, I've seen this person, look at them, I see them changing roles, I see what they're doing, right? I look at some of their posts, and some, like, I do a full holistic view of their socials and everything, like all of that. You can get a sense of the person, you know. Then you can make a decision about interviewing them based on these things, but also, like, an AI tool doesn't see potential in someone or the nuance of someone's career, right? Like, it's looking for like keywords and basics. It doesn't have the human judgment you need, right? And so a human sorcerer is always better than an AI sorcerer, I would say. And we've done tests for this internally, right? I used sourcing tools as a test, because when AI came out, we were like, hey, let's see what's going on. We tested them. We built our own hunt list. We went into these systems. I'm not going to say what the names are, just because I don't want to disparage other companies, but I'll just say I use over 10 different sourcing tools, okay, that are AI enabled. And at most, they would find 5 to 10% of the candidates that were in my hunt list that I put together that would have been, I think, let's say a solid list, right? And then it would also throw in other candidates that were like, no, like not even close. Like, what are you talking about? So
yeah,
if anything, it's like something you have to babysit. I'd say, look, if you want to use it in addition to your human sourcing, I understand, like just another tool in your toolbox to try to bring more people into your source. Like, we go out for referrals, we go out for associations, we go out on Slack communities and Reddit and so on. Like, we go to a lot of different sources to find people. This could be just another sourcing tool that you use. But I would say if you're just using that as your main sourcing tool, or you're putting a lot of let's say, don't put all your eggs in one basket.
Yeah,
I wouldn't
for sure.
put them in that basket either, right? So there's a lot of reasons not to.
Great point. So like in terms of the efficiency dialogue, it does seem like a very efficiency driven market out there, and I'm sure you probably have some good insight on this talking to C-level people. There's been a lot of restructures. Like you said, it depends on the industry. I mean, supply chain manufacturing got hit really hard, whereas during COVID they were booming because everybody was ordering everything online. But like tariffs have hit it. There's so much up and down, and a lot of restructures have happened. The efficiency discussion, it seems like a lot of people are trying to hit their profit goals by contracting rather than growing.
Yeah.
How have you seen that evolve? I mean, 2026 seems to have been a big year for that like restructuring people at the top. A lot of private equity companies and getting involved, mergers, acquisitions, etc. What's your take on the way that the market's been evolving, and do you feel like this is something that's going to improve anytime soon, or do we have another couple of years of this ahead? Based on
I mean, I think obviously there's the new shiny ball of AI that every company is trying to like integrate into their workflows and so on, and create efficiencies and savings. And I mean, the promise of AI is great. Well, it's great for business in the sense like, oh, we can eliminate all labor, right? The whole reason the valuation of the AI companies is so high is they're betting that they're going to be able to decouple the economy from human labor, which to me is a way for a whole bunch of bad things that will happen. But anyways, that's a whole other conversation. But in this case, I'd say, yeah, companies are trying to save money. They're seeing that their top line revenues are not growing. They're kind of stagnant, or, and again, it depends on the industry, but I'd say in general, it's a pretty zombie economy. We're just sort of tricking along. All the growth you're seeing is mainly in the big five, the NVIDIAs and OpenAI, and the circle of money that's happening there. You can Google what the circle of money with the big five is, and there's articles about this. Money is funneled through from chipset manufacturers to build data centers for the AI companies. Money keeps getting poured in to this circle of money that's happening. And so when you have that circle of money, investors are like, well, let's get into AI, right? That's where the potential for the big boom is. Or, they're saying the S&P is doing so well, so I'm just going to invest in that. And you'll see the stock market's been going great, even though most companies are just chugging along. So that's why we say it's a zombie economy, where the stock market is not really showing what we see on Main Street in terms of like, oh, companies are growing and people are doing well. People are not doing well, right? You ask anybody, inflation's killed people. Cost of living, I know in Canada here, things have really gotten bad the last 10 years, right? So I think for the economy and for businesses, what you're seeing is they're trying to reduce their costs. So a lot of these companies have huge layoffs, and you're like, oh, it's due to AI. Not necessarily. Oracle let go 30,000 people. Now, I don't have the exact numbers, but it was between 9 and 14,000 were brought back the next day as contractors. So from a W-2 employee, you're now 1099. They also offshored, I think, between 9 and 14 or something like that. A huge amount of people were offshored as well. So what does that mean? That means you don't want to have the payroll burden for your company.
Cash flow thing. Yeah.
Cash flow. We can have contractors, which we can let go at any time. And also for the P&L and shareholders, it just looks like your salaries are less. And so they hide the spend in their expense line, right? It's just like a game that they've always played this. So instead of having layoffs and offshoring as the old way of doing things, now they say investing in AI or layoffs due to AI or offshoring It's just another tool in their toolbox of that. But it's just propping up the numbers. So like eventually they're going to have to hire people back.
Yeah, and this is something that you brought up that I find very interesting too. Is that we aren't yet seeing a lot of positions disappearing because of AI or automation. But I was someone had shared something with me, like an article, God, I want to say like 6 months ago. And I don't know if this has changed, so forgive me if this is out of date, but that we're in this kind of trough of AI right now because there hasn't been enough widespread adoption. People are for many reasons, because of the market, because of the war, because of whatever, that like, and also just seeing which tool people are going to go with, that we haven't even touched the tip of the iceberg of companies, particularly in the US, implementing real AI into their processes to automate things. So we haven't even touched that yet. So we haven't really seen. What we're seeing now is still sort of juggling around with cash flow, like you're saying, to a large extent. We haven't begun to really see the AI adoption. So like how much money AI companies will make or which tools people will land on is still kind of as yet to be seen. And we're probably not going to see a big chunk of that start to happen until like Q2, Q3 of next year, is what they were saying a few months ago. Are you feeling the same thing?
Well, I recently read an article. They're saying that 50% of the new data centers that were slated to be built have been canceled.
Yeah, because they were too early. No, it's just too early, right?
Too early, or writing on the wall that this is a big bubble and be ready for the pop. I think I haven't heard of any company that I've talked to that can truly say they've actually generated ROI from bringing AI in. So yeah, I've heard a lot of people losing money, on average 300 to 500K for AI implementation. So
yeah, for sure. It's just not really, but there's not enough test cases yet, I would say, at least not from what the articles are saying. Like I know IBM was a very early adopter. They're always an interesting case study that they always publish, whatever Ernst and Young studies they do of every major thing they do, because they're such an old and tried and true tech company. But I think in 2025, I think it was that they had made a bunch of positions redundant, and they had let go of like 6,000 people or whatever it was. But then they hired back just as many people because they claim that the company had become so much leaner and more efficient that these were all growth positions. Now, is that
it's good PR true? Is what it is,
or is it just cash flow management? Yeah, exactly. Like that's the question, right?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, we'll see, right? Like I think obviously the one thing I would say is, look, it is a technology that's evolving and improving, right? Like ChatGPT now compared to 2 years ago or a year ago, like it's amazing the improvements. So I think it is improving. So we have to keep in mind that this is technology it's just like, anything new. It takes time. We're going to see consolidation in the market, right? There's like too many language models. We need really to cut it down. Yeah. It's like VHS and beta or DVD or whatever. Like you're going to cut down the formats and the platforms. Like, so a lot of that's going to happen. We'll see. I think like the gloom and doom about AI taking over and everyone losing their jobs, I think that may be a little bit too early to say that.
For sure.
But then at the same time, I'll say, look, if we have AGI, which is entirely different from a language model, that's artificial general intelligence.
Yeah.
Like when you think of like the movies, that's what the AI is, the AGI, right? If we have that, then things can accelerate very quickly, right? But we don't have that now. We just have language models, which are, they do what they can do.
They do what they can do, and it's basically like human-like computer processing. So it imitates human-like communication, but it's still high computing. It's still fully computing, right? It's not, a sentient being that can do its own thing and make have its own agency.
Well, I can tell when it's AI written a mile away now. I've seen so much AI written slop that like when I see anything posted, I'll be like, that's AI.
For sure.
It used to be the M dash, the little line, the M dash. Yeah. But now you can just read it by the way the sentences are put together. There's a certain way it does it.
For sure.
And you can detect it,
This is something that I think people need to get to understand, right? Is if you want your AI agent, whatever it is, Chat GPT. I'm using Perplexity currently for research and stuff, which I like the tone of Perplexity a lot better. It's not just kind of like, no matter what you say to Chat GPT, it's like, what a great idea. You're a genius. Your company to create a poop flavored ice cream company is brilliant. Everyone's going to love it. Like, it doesn't matter what you say to it, you know? You're always a genius, which I don't love. But the thing is that in order to get it to write something that sounds like a human, you need to train it for a long time and give it specific things and tone and go back and forth and whatever. Asking any of these agents to just write you something and then putting it up online is a big mistake, because everyone can tell, right? It sounds like an AI written thing. If you train it for a while to have a tone and give it resources and give it a whole bunch of blog posts or books to read or whatever, and then it returns it to you and you're like, I like this, tweak that, and you go back and forth. But in that time, theoretically, you could perhaps have written it yourself, is what I'm saying. However, you have to put in the work, right, to train it to not sound like an AI.
Yeah, I mean, that's what we did when we created our own Ready Set Exec bot. We had to create the whole brand identity, and it's like onboarding a new digital employee almost. You have to create a whole governance structure with it. What are the rules, what you can say, what you can't say, for sure. It takes time. But still, even so, like, I always believe there should be a human in the loop between anything that you're creating that's going to get out to the world, right? Because that's your brand, and you got to have someone double check it. So it's important.
It is. Well, so somehow we are already at an hour. Time flies when we're talking about music and AI and all this stuff. But John, it's been great having you on. How should people reach out to you and check out not only Ready Set Exec, but Ready Set Exec, the podcast?
Yeah, so I mean, on our main page, there's links to our events, to our podcasts, and so on. So readysetexec.com, I'd say check it out. There's a lot of content there, a lot of free giveaways too, like a LinkedIn guide, how to fix up your LinkedIn profile, right? So a lot of free stuff there for people to download and check us out. And then, of course, connect with me on LinkedIn. Always open to new conversations, right?
Awesome. Thanks, John, and thanks, everybody. Feel free to check out this episode, catching small bits of it. See it anywhere you get the podcast after the fact, and hope to see you all soon.
Thanks.